o'clock. To avoid any gathering, we're not going to have any activities planned that evening. So that rolls us right into Small Business Saturday. Melissa and Jill are working on a Shop Small campaign, so that will go the full week of Thanksgiving. So from Sunday, November 22nd through Saturday, November 28th, which is the official Shop Small Saturday. Lots of S's, sorry. So on the final day of the Shop Small campaign, we're going to add some live Christmas music downtown. We've reached out about using the balcony above Villager Deli, so we're hoping to get approval to place the band above to avoid any gatherings in the park. So that's just to add kind of to the hallmark feel of our village. So on Friday, December 4th, which should have been our official tree lighting date, we are going to do a hometown holiday drive-through. So we're going to utilize the Cannon Park Community Center parking lot. We are going to have an event from 5 to 9. We will be setting up 10 by 10 tents and kind of setting a scene under each tent for people to just drive through. We'll only have one stop along that route, which will be for Santa, so kind of give the kids a chance to wave to Santa, also to collect a goodie bag that we'll be passing out, and also to drop their letter to Santa. So that's just their Christmas wish list, and then Santa, with the help of our Parks and Rec staff, we do respond to each letter that we receive. There's also a map of that on page 2 of what we handed out if you wanted to just kind of get a better idea of what that is. And so a Village Christmas, that will be Friday, December 11th from 5 to 8. That is actually planned by the Pinehurst Business Partners. They're just planning kind of an open house where they stay open later. The Pinehurst Business Partners will be advertising, but the businesses are responsible for doing their own promotional items during the open house, or they'll be doing a promotion sale during that time. So that's an event they're already planning, and so we really want to just come in and enhance that for them. I have spoken with Katrin on some of these ideas. It's just pending approval. And so we can do additional marketing with them through our village website and through our e-news. Again, we will add live music just downtown to kind of help set the mood. We would like to have an appearance from Santa and another opportunity for children to kind of wave and drop off their Christmas wish list with a response from our team and Santa. And then we'd like to request the help from PD to just help with extra foot traffic downtown. And then other than that, we'll work with the Pinehurst Business Partners on their needs. So that's kind of our timeline of events. Do you guys have any questions on that?
It's a much bigger plan than I thought we could even envision. This is
Oh,
good.
great.
This is good.
That's awesome.
One quick note, and I think you've already covered this in some of your information about distributing the news. We want to work with business partners, of course, but we need to keep getting, I call it the Mark Wagner list or the Jeff Batten list or whatever it is that has names of other businesses. Mm-hmm. And somehow over the next few months, maybe with some help, we can get those combined in our overall efforts to help businesses in the village of Pinehurst to do what they can, get a better consolidated effort with that. But at the moment, we need to keep going through on all the avenues, which I'm sure you know a lot better than I do. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
This sounds great, but questions, comments? Judy?
I have a question about the hometown holiday drive-through.
Yeah.
What are the lessons learned from voting, early voting? I heard early on about a lot of traffic congestion. I see you've got this as one way in, one way out kind of thing. So do you feel like this will smoothly work? I mean, is there really room for 2 cars where you're showing 2 cars?
Yeah, so there is room. It is a tight space. The plan is, the only time they'll really cross is through the driveway, which we've seen a lot of with voting, especially with curbside voting. And then just kind of right past that first parking spot, we only have one planned stop around the route. So we're also hoping to help kind of hold cars if needed, if things start to get congested as the drive-through, because we don't want people to stop. So we can kind of hold cars there, let them wave to Santa. He can talk to the kids from under his tent. And then, like I said, we'll pass out our goodie bag. So that will kind of be a holding spot to help kind of alleviate some of the moving traffic.
Yeah, just to add, some of the issues maybe with curbside voting with the early voting at the community center. So if you have a car that's pulled up along the curb, then you have a car wanting to enter as well and exit. You're talking about 3 cars kind of lined up in our driveway. So that will cause some issues there. However, with the layout here, we're just talking about one lane in, one lane out, so it should be able to accommodate the traffic flow.
You're gonna direct people off of 211 a certain way in, because you're gonna come in off 211, have a short run there.
Correct, so we will have them, the plan is to right turn in only, so we won't accept any cars turning left into the parking lot. The plan would be to force people out right, but that's where an area that we would request assistance, so if things do start to get back up at the light, then we could force people out left as well. So we'll have PD assistance.
Well, yeah, we just heard, of course, issues with the intersection of 211 and Rattlesnake Gun Club. So we need to make an effort on how that traffic pattern's communicated and how you're going to work that around.
Yeah, and we can work with the PD ahead of time. If they want us to avoid, we can also push cars solely out left if we need to. So right turn in, left turn out if we have to onto Rattlesnake. So we can definitely talk that through.
So the tree's just gonna automatically turn on at 5 o'clock on Friday after Thanksgiving.
A staff member will go and plug it in.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, no countdown, no.
right. Sorry, John, you can't do that.
We'll work something out, Megan. Forget these guys.
Yeah, that's what we've kind of talked about. We can do something extra if you want to do something. And
No, I want to keep everything safe. The,
Photo op,
what's that?
photo op for you. Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, well, the 211 situation is of concern to me, so I'm sure you'll be able to work on that.
Yeah, we can definitely do right in, left out. That way cars have to circle to get back to 211 if that's the direction they're going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was my question, listening to this. At what point do you get the police involved?
I like to have police at all events. So
So you've talked this over with them and they know to anticipate?
we have held off on moving forward all the details until it was talked through with you guys and
Oh,
approved.
okay.
Yeah, no, but I work with Glenn on every event.
Is Rassy Wicker easier for something like this?
And
Does
that-
it have more roads leading up to it that would allow for stacking of cars that are waiting than is available on Rattlesnake?
I think that's a great suggestion. We have talked through that idea because of the school use and we think this is gonna take us all day to set up. So we're gonna have to section off and close our parking lot throughout the day. We'll start with the far right side to get the first 4 tents set up and move. Because of the school occupying it during the day, we don't have the flexibility that we need to have time to set up, but I think that is an option if we need to look into it.
And what day are you doing this?
This is the.
On a Friday?
Yes, the 4th.
I see.
Did you have something to add, Dave?
No.
Okay.
I was going to add just one thing in terms of, once we determine the route, how we want traffic to flow, that is something we will advertise. We can work with the PD, but just like we do for 4th of July, we make sure people know they're coming in off of Monticello versus Highway 5. So we can prepare a map, put that out with our press so that the public knows it, social media, on the website, and just get that word out as much as we can in advance, if everybody's okay with what we're doing.
And if you have them turn off of 211 at Dundee, and then come back around like that, then you'd have them queued up going into Cannon.
Our only
a good
concern
point,
was
Judy.
where our traffic might back up, might that impact residences along the way, but that's something we'll work out and make sure the PD's
Have to
aware
tough
where
it
we
out.
have kind of our pressure points for that.
With,
Lauren won't mind.
What's that?
Lauren won't mind.
Lauren won't mind, yeah.
with the apparent to date, which could change the apparent, I guess it'd be not the lack of planning, but with the apparent idea of other towns, Aberdeen, Carthage, I don't know where else, of not doing much, if anything, like this, as far as I'm aware. I suspect, again, it comes back to the traffic volume, could be quite extensive this year, given time of year and people want to get out and do something. So comes back to that traffic plan again. I think we could see a large volume from around the area, which is fine, just so as we can control it and make sure everybody's safe. As
Absolutely.
I know you're hearing all that.
Megan's already said I have to be the Grinch at the back of the line to tell them no more cars past this point, so we'll work that out.
We do that every year in the Santa line for pictures at the tree lighting, so we can send Mark to the back.
I'm the bad guy, so.
Love this early date. I think you ought to consider this early date in perpetuity. It helps the retailers. The earlier you get the lights up, the earlier it turns into a shopping village. So It'd be cool to see the response of this from village retailers. Especially since you're going to have it up on the busiest shopping day of the year, I guess it was, the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think that will bring a nice charm to it as well, bringing people downtown.
Yeah. Now, there's a few other pages here. Do you want to go through that with us, too?
Yeah,
The
if you
different
guys are ready
lighting?
to move on.
Yep.
So just some decoration and lighting plans for this year, just to kind of talk through. I'm sure you guys are familiar with how our village typically looks during Christmas, so a couple plans to enhance that. For our net lights, we're planning to add some additional net lights in Tufts Park, kind of to round the sidewalk going towards the library. So on the far left side, if you're looking at our Christmas tree in the park. So we'll be adding some additional net lights there. We'll also be extending the net lights we currently have on Azalea Road. There are some currently there, but at night they do cut a little short, so we're just going to extend the roadside one. And then we also have potential to add net lights along Village Green Road West across from the theater building, kind of in the sand parking lot pine straw. We put up tree clusters each year, so it's a cluster of 3 different sized trees. We typically have one in the walkway walking from the sand lot to the deli parking lot. We are going to move that this year with the addition of some lights downtown. It's going to force us to move it. We're looking at moving it in the pine straw across from the theater building, similar to those net lights. We have the potential to move the tree cluster we have on Market Square right now. We also have a map. The last page you have is a map kind of showing you where those tree clusters are, if you find that helpful as I talk about it. Right now, it's currently kind of in the middle of downtown. We can push it towards the Potpourri on the corner, so it could also be visible from Magnolia Road when you're driving up, or we could potentially add one there. And then we are deciding between adding bows to each of the trees or potentially adding some burlap to wrap throughout, intertwine the trees to kind of make them a little bit more appealing during the day. And then with our large Christmas tree, we added grapevine balls. We added those last year. They're lit, they look beautiful at night and also during the day. So we've added more of those just for our decorations. And then we've also completed a PO, so we're pending approval on that for these 3D orb stacks. That's what you'll see on the next page with warm lights. So we're gonna kind of end cap our tree with those, kind of another picture opportunity for people when they come down to the park. And then I just wanted to mention that the beautification committee is adding lights to all of the wreaths downtown. They have added 200 string count lights to each wreath, so there's gonna be 400 counts of lights on each wreath. From my map, that's gonna add 96 lights downtown, and just for reference, last year we put up 81 net lights. So just kind of how many lights are really going up downtown this year. It should be beautiful. So wanted to mention that. We also have some future opportunities we could discuss if we're looking for more lighting downtown. But that can be talked about at another time, just kind of some ideas that we had as well.
Oh, this is a good time to talk about it.
Okay.
Because I especially think that Ritter and Magnolia area, I find that the Christmas lights are incredible in every direction except the direction where the largest number of tourists walk from the Carolina.
Yeah.
I feel like there should be some future focus on making sure that those resort guests get that same experience you get when you come in from the Holly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible experience coming in that way, but there's something about that direction
Yeah.
doesn't seem to, and it has to do with plugs, it has to do with physical attributes like that.
Yes.
But I feel like as soon as you get out of that path to Carolina, it should be a winter wonderland. And
Yep.
I think there's support from village businesses if there's going to be a fundraising campaign for the capital expenditures. Obviously, the labor and all this other stuff is the village, but I think you'd see support to extend it that way.
Yeah.
From village business. So if you could just think now about an opportunity to get support from businesses to expand where the tourists are walking down from, Carolina.
Doesn't this map address that, though? You are doing more upchinking into Ritter.
I mean,
So there's 4 street lights already there, so those will
Yep.
each have a wreath on them.
Right.
But as you can see, if you're coming from Ritter and going towards downtown. They're all on the right side of the road.
Yeah.
Kevin Brewer and I kind of walked around to just kind of identify some areas. That's one that he had brought up as well. Our personal suggestions would be to add 2 streetlights on the other side of the road. So not only would that just bring more light in, easier said than done, I know. That would also bring more light in as you come in on a regular basis, but would also add 4 additional wreaths during Christmas time, which I think will be pretty charming.
When you say streetlight, you mean new permanent Village of Pinehurst streetlights? Okay, so that's not going to happen, I don't
No.
think. on Chigma, but Kevin
Next-
makes a
That's
good point about,
Future.
yeah, well, some of
That's
this
not
looks,
gonna
yeah,
happen
some of this
unless
is,
we talk about it now, right?
yeah.
So that's just kind of what he and I kind of discussed. We thought that would, again, that's just ideas.
I remember as a kid, and, you know, kids' memories are not good. Oaks were lit with lights. They put lighting in the trees in the village. They put lighting in the trees in the village, and maybe I imagined that in 12-year-old, but I don't know, it seemed like we could win in any contest of looking like a Christmas village, and this is a category we could be #1 in the country in, and might as well go for it. And I don't know, is that any talk of lighting the trees, put lights in the trees ever?
Yeah, as of right now, Kevin is really on our, Kevin Brewer, excuse
Yeah.
me, is really kind of in charge of all of our lighting downtown. He and I discussed, I think that these wreaths that the beautification committee is going to light this year is going to bring a ton of light downtown.
Thank you.
So
so
kind
that-
of our start would be to light those and then reevaluate.
So, yeah, there will be an effort, as you've explained a couple times now, that there will be more lights this year spread around, including in some of these places for the future, and beautification's working on that, along with others. It occurred to me, picking up on Kevin Drum's point, if in the future, looking at that Chinkaman Ritter, what if we discuss with the resort their ability to bring some lighting down their pathway
Yeah.
that goes
It's
along
our-
Ritter
it's our
and across the
pathway.
street? Sorry?
It's our pathway. It's the right of way.
No, I mean from the resort. I'm talking about
No,
from
he's talking
the
about their
front door of the hotel, all the way down on their brick walk in front of the spa. If they did some decorating there that would bring people towards that Ritter intersection where we pick them up and go from there. Just a thought for the future.
Yeah, I
We
can note that down.
Discuss that with,
And along those same lines, I would think a tree cluster at the
Yeah.
Chinquapin and Ritter would
Yeah.
be a good addition.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's sort of the start or
Right.
the
That's
end,
right.
depends which way you're going, yeah.
right.
This is impressive, though, to turn, well, you know, lemon into
Creative.
lemonade. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
With the exception of those events that, you know, the shopping and all that'll bring people around, and depending on COVID, everything else is lighting and decorating and trying to encourage people to come when they feel comfortable, and I think that's good.
Great.
So I don't see a lot of downside here to making this effort and getting this out there. And the car traffic patterns will emerge.
Yep, we'll work on that.
Good. Any other points you want to make to us, Dave, Megan, or?
Dave might have something.
I think Megan covered it pretty well. Again, like kind of just piggyback on what she said. I think we're gonna have quite a bit more light down there with all the lamp posts. I think we have 48 lamp posts and 2 wreaths on each lamp post. So quite a bit more light this year, but we'll get it all set up. We're looking at the week of November 19th, I believe. And so it takes several days for us to get it all set up and put up in place. And then we can, put it in place, evaluate it. If we need to tweak some things, we can tweak some things if need be. But I think we got a pretty good plan in place at this point.
What about the timeline for the swags on all the street corners? How does that fit into this?
The swags, the current scheduled time for that is November 18th. And so we'll have our tree completed, pending weather, of course, on November 19th. So kind of that's the time we'll see it really all come together.
Okay, all right. I'm going to address one more question, and this involves Natalie, maybe more than yourselves. You and I have been in touch recently about overall support for local businesses, taking advantage of Small Business November, and advertising. Now, are we going to do any special advertising with the pilot at this point? I mean, we'll use all our social media and hopefully get Mary Kate, our reporter from the pilot, a set of these, and she can go from there. But what about other support for business community this Christmas?
Yeah, I think right now, as Megan mentioned, Jill's really working on a full week-long plan for Shop Small as opposed to just that Saturday after Thanksgiving. So she's been in contact with the businesses, and we do take out an advertisement in the pilot. So we do that print advertisement, and then Melissa normally puts everything out. We put it on our event page, so we create a Facebook event. Megan, you might be able to chime in on some of this too if I missed something. But she creates a Facebook event, so there's additional marketing, as it relates to that. And then she'll put it on social media. She'll do a separate, she'll do an e-news to residents and e-news to businesses and our traditional outreaches. But beyond those things that we've typically done in the past, we haven't talked about ways to expand that as of yet.
So one other suggestion is like the garden club, when we have our annual plant sale, we create a poster. And we take it to all the downtown merchants and they put it up. Since there's so many different activities, I think that you could have a very creative poster that would be at the deli, would be at the bank, whatever, to help get out the word. That wouldn't
think in
take
the past-
much in the way of creating that.
I think in the past, she maybe has done some posters for Small Business
Small
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah. So maybe there's a way to do a combination of the two events
Or
and
a
bring
separate
in.
one, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Good. Any other questions from council? I think we have a undoubted consensus to move ahead on this. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 3, BPAC project recommendation for fiscal 2021.
From the younger generation of Parks and Recreation to the older generation of Parks and Recreation now, so, no offense, Tom, I was talking about myself. So. First, before I get into our recommendation for the funds that we have in this fiscal year, I do want to touch on the comment by the gentleman about Ritter Road and the crossing there on Highway 5. That is a high priority for the BPAC committee as well, and we have talked about it at numerous meetings. We actually just talked about it at our meeting earlier this month. Being able to implement that signal crossing or improved crossing, whatever that may be, does kind of depend on DOT, and we have been waiting on them to figure out what their STIP funding, is that correct, that they have in there?
Yeah, DOT's preference is to wrap that up into the NC5 improvement overall package. We've seen some delay, potential delay timelines associated with that project. I mean, it may be worth us going back and re-engaging them on that topic. Ultimately, I think that Division 8's position is going to be that, especially in this tough budget condition they're in right now, they're going to want to wrap it up in that program because they take advantage of the STIP funding rather than doing it with local Division 8 dollars.
And I don't know if there's any possibility, if the village really wants to do this, could we pursue it on our own?
We could pay for it, yeah.
DOT's guidance and pay for it. So depending on funding availability, that may be something that we want to consider if this is truly a high priority. So.
Right.
And I thought Brandon in the past has said that there is safety money to do safety things aside from stiff stuff.
And that's true. The same caveat applies though. I mean, everything's tighter for DOT right now, so the more stuff he can wrap up into a STIP-funded project, the more funds he has available to meet other needs of the community, so.
They shifted their formula towards safety in one of their programs. They have so many different funding models.
I think you're talking about the algorithm change.
Their algorithm towards safety.
Yeah.
I do also think, since we last met John and Jeff with DOT, I think things have changed a bit. And I think it's worth I agree, it's a long shot.
been a while, too.
What?
It's been a while, too.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It was a great meeting, and I'm not, great meeting with DOT. I mean, that's good. And I think it should be revisited because of the environment has changed, and I think we should try to set that up and bring this up, and I think might be a lost cause, but I'm ready to, I think we should pursue it anyway,
Yeah.
because of this
It's-
picture, the picture has changed.
The other piece of the picture that's changed and is going to necessitate us reengaging them on the potential delays in the STIP-funded projects is the new timeline for US Opens.
Right.
They're going to have to cram that stuff in between two
talking about.
Opens that,
That's what I'm
they
talking
weren't counting on that second one.
I was
Right.
being a little too cryptic, that's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, on things changing.
Yeah, we have lots of things with DOT to discuss and use some leverage to do it. All right, anyway,
I'd support us springing for the cost if we have to wait to get reimbursed until it's put into a
Yeah,
STIP
I would
project.
support that too.
Will the traffic study we just approved give us any ammunition?
The traffic study we
Well,
approved,
Jeff
Highway
had-
5,
it won't count pedestrian
No.
traffic.
right.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to use my mayor's prerogative here. Let's get into the agenda item number 3.
Sorry, I
Not
took us
too far away
I
from
took us a little off
Go ahead.
topic, I apologize. So basically, BPAC committee met, and we wanted to make a recommendation of where we would use funding that's in this current fiscal year's budget. And as you'll recall, you had some residents along Woods Road come and talk to you about their concerns about safety. And, we discussed the benefits of extending the sidewalk from the intersection we talked about earlier with Rattlesnake and 211, bringing that down along Village right-of-way on Rattlesnake to Woods Road, and then taking the turn down Woods, still staying on Cannon Park property until we get to McIntyre. And then at that point, we would continue down Woods Road to tie into the school at Dundee. And in a perfect world, if this is, if we get a consensus on this, we would want to move pretty quickly on this in terms of identifying a consultant to do the design work for us so that we could have this in place by summer before the school opens for next school year. And as part of this, we would also look to incorporate a crossing on Rattlesnake at Magnolia Woods. We have seen a number of parents who park in that old pool parking lot, and they're walking their kids, going to pick up their kids, and they're walking back. We've had some requests from that for the public, so we think this would be a time to address that as well. And then we would have some other crossings on Woods Road at McIntyre, and then again to cross Dundee to the school. So this is the recommendation of the BPAC that we use our funds here. We have $250,000 this year. I don't want to speculate at this point until we have plans drawn what that cost will be, but part of that discussion will also be what the surface is. If you think of the community center campus, we have concrete sidewalks. The other side of Rattlesnake Trail, where Shortstop and the nursing home are, we have concrete sidewalks. So to be consistent, that would probably be my recommendation at this point, just from an aesthetic look to match what's on the other side of the road. Even though aesthetically, I know it's probably not the prettiest. The park itself is not in the historic district, but the rest of the neighborhood there is. So if you wanted us to consider brick, we can run all sorts of pricing comparisons for that. But I do think either concrete, at least around the Cannon Park border, is appropriate. And then we could transition to screenings if we wanted to when we cross McIntyre. As you know, there's already a section of screenings that one of the residents has put in there, so we could simply tie into that.
So you're just looking for consensus from us to pursue getting design work and coming back
Correct.
to us with a real budget.
If you're in agreement with
timeline,
this
blah, blah,
route
blah.
that we're proposing, then we will move forward with hiring a consultant. We will get the design work done. And we can always come back and talk to you about surfacing once we have some estimates on that if you'd like.
I would just be reluctant to go to brick sidewalks in the neighborhood on Woods between McIntyre and Dundee, because I don't think you can offer that very many places. I mean,
If you set that precedent, it could be
I
challenging
think
down
you're
the
whetting
road.
your
Yeah,
appetite for
and
something you
we
can't deliver.
typically, we've only used that treatment in the more commercial areas.
Right.
So we would be setting a precedent that,
I mean, we have Clay Pass,
Yeah.
to and from the school on Kelly, and, up Everett, and other roads along there, but, so I mean, I'd clay or some clay-like, you know, I know all the issues with it, but clay is, it's much more natural, and I'd rather have that in my front yard if I lived on woods.
Mark's point, the residents have followed up and what they suggested they would do in starting that work in that block already. I don't know if you've probably noticed that, but you're right. I mean, it's, you know, when weighing different surface options, terrain matters. I'm talking about slope, and that's a very flat area. It's a place where sand clay paths or screenings and other things are much more viable from a long-term maintenance standpoint. So I
historic
think it works
nature.
fine.
And I would just, from a maintenance standpoint, I'm always going to advocate for at least screenings because they do hold together better than sand clay. And we don't have any greenway section that is sand clay. Everything is screenings or it's a paved surface. So I would recommend we stick with screenings in that short section. And that's what we have on Craig Road coming from the park to Dundee. Everything else is already that material.
And I would remind you that we've got the screening going all the way from the school to the library. So we're hooking into that as well.
Yeah, we've been criticized by the Park Service because we got away from sand clay, and I have no problem getting away from sand clay if we can explain why. It would be my preference, and I know there's been some advancements in sand clay, but I'll put in the plug for sand clay if it makes sense, only if it makes sense.
And I can say that Jeff Batten and myself and a few other village staff have been studying the surfaces of those trails. We kind of took a break during Baldridge, but we will be jumping back on that to provide you some information on the various surfaces that we have, what their upfront cost is, what your maintenance costs are down the road. So
That'd be very helpful for many reasons, Mark.
I think it will
As you
too.
know, yeah, yeah. So you could proceed with the contract to design this and leave potentially the actual surface for another day. However, it seems that from topography point of view and look point of view, the screenings look would be applicable here,
Okay.
generally, I guess, at this time. Okay. Any other comment from council? Is this
No,
good
I think-
consensus?
I think I like the way Lydia said it. It should be historic clay unless there's a good explanation for it not to be. That's what you said, right? Yeah, and that, I kind of agree with that language. There are sometimes good explanations for it not to be, but until there is a good explanation for it not to be, we should try to embrace our historic self.
And I think we'll be able to provide you some data points on that related to my VOP request
Right.
and the type of surfacing that's in
Yeah.
place. So
There will be some difference between pure, old-fashioned sand clay and the screenings, but not that much, I don't think, in cost or look, for that matter, but,
screenings are probably a little bit more than sand clay, but not significantly.
okay.
So
But those are things you'll have available.
that's all
at the
part of
right
that
time.
study
Okay.
that we're doing. Yes, sir.
Any other questions on this? I think we have consensus to move forward, Mark. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That'll be a very, very
Thank you for your
wonderful
work on the
improvement to the village and highly appreciated by certainly the people who live there and a lot of children as well.
And we'll talk to them as part of this process, those residents that would be affected along that route on Woods Road, just to make
Good.
sure everybody's aware of that. We'll reach out to them as well.
Good.
Okay?
Thank you, Mark.
Since we've had this hiatus, we're happy to get the money to start work again and have meetings again, so thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
It has nothing to do with you not being on BPAC anymore, since we
Yeah.
didn't spend
All
money
this
while you
work's
were there,
getting
so.
done Now that I'm not on it.
Thank
I
you.
was on it too, yeah. All right, item number 4, discuss library needs assessment. Mr. Sanborn?
Thank you, John. This is, I think, we've reached a point where I think it's appropriate for the council and with staff participation to start to set the stage for making a decision. And I think that, you know, what we'd like to engage you with tonight is kind of a start point in framing how to make a decision. And what Natalie is going to engage you with here is an effort to get some input from you on what are the viable or most desirable options to consider. When you evaluate those options, what criteria do you want to evaluate them against? And then what don't we know currently that that you're going to need to know in order to make the eventual decision? So the idea isn't to engage you in a conversation about what the best possible option is tonight. This is just about starting to set conditions for making a decision in the future.
Natalie, I think you have a presentation to make with respect to this grid, helpful index you've been working on for us. So let's go into that. I don't think you're on.
There we go. All right. So as Jeff mentioned, and as my memo mentions here for this agenda item, you'll see there's no attachments in here in this agenda item because we have given you a lot of information. And what I have Beth pass out to you is what I have been working on so far is just kind of like a next piece of information. So what I want to do is tell you what you have in front of you and then focus you in on the 3 lists that I think we need to start working on as you said, Jeff. So the first thing you have is just an overview summary of the square footage library, recommendations and the tiers and some information there. We're not going to get into square footage tonight. I just want to make you aware that we have a method by which to, with our architect at Clearscapes, figure out what an appropriate square footage size would be. That's all that's intended to do. So if you'll go to the second sheet in your packet, and basically what I did when we met last time was I said, just trying to figure out what might be the best way to move forward. What are the next steps? Now that you've obtained all the public input, what's the process by which the council is going to use to make a decision on how to address resident library needs? And so my suggestion was first identify, what are your options? What options are you willing to consider? And what options are you not willing to consider? Let's document those. Is there additional information that you might need that you do not have today? So for example, if you were to choose options, if you were going to say we're going to have 5 or 6 options that might cost money, well, it'd be important information to know what each of those options might cost, right? So what's the additional information that you might need to make a decision when choosing between alternative choices or options? And then what are the factors you're going to consider when you do have all the options that you've chosen to evaluate, okay? So as I mentioned, cost information is going to be an important factor for you to consider. Maybe, is there appropriate or excessive infrastructures a cost associated with one option versus another? Or maybe something might get displaced if you choose one option versus another option. That might be something to consider. So, or maybe it's important that you adapt or reuse an existing building, for example. So so what I really like for you to do is just have a discussion about, is this list complete and accurate? Is there something you want to add to the list? Is there something you think should be removed from the list? Then I'd like to go to, based on what these options are, is there additional information that you might need? And are there other factors that you might want to consider? And we may not, and that has incorporated the emails that you sent to me between your last meeting and this meeting. I've tried to assemble all of it and put it in the right bucket. In some cases, you provided me with comments that didn't go in that actual bucket, it went in a different bucket. So I put it in the right bucket, or tried to, at least. Okay, does that make sense? And I think really, for us to move forward, us meaning the council to move forward with this assessment and making a decision, I really think it's important for you to talk about what are the options that you're willing to consider. Are there options on here that you're not willing to consider? And it doesn't mean that these options are or are not possible, are or are not viable, may or may not be the best choice, okay? So some are going to be better than others, some are going to be more viable than others, but we're not going to know that until we do the evaluation, and that is later in the process.
So I would add as a possible new location, and I'm just making this up, so, but the Bank of America building, the old Hall of Fame building,
Okay?
I don't think it's been open since COVID. I mean, my ATM is there, so that's important. But I'm not sure that that building is being utilized. I've had at least,
I think I read something that they were going to close
Close
it.
it?
Yeah.
so I don't know, but, and somebody else may have told me that too, and, Natalie, but that's definitely one that, has historic, advantage of repurposing an existing building, an adaptive reuse.
Okay.
It's our fancy word.
Location.
And a great location.
Judy, which page of Natalie's notes are you looking at right now?
Well, I'm actually on the factors to consider page, but
Yeah.
I'm just telling,
Okay.
I'm putting it on the right spot.
only on Natalie to plug it in.
Yeah, so additional information needed. What's the status of the Bank of America building? Is that available? You would need to know that first, right?
Well, I'm confused about one thing here. When we talked earlier, even today, we talked about what were the steps 5, 6, and 7 from the prior list.
They're just numbered 1, 2, and 3 on this
Right,
tab.
so what I'm trying to do
It's
is
the same
get to
thing.
those because everything I write down is under those headings.
So step number 5,
As you said.
That first sheet is not germane.
I know, I'm
to
trying to
5, 6,
get,
and
just
7.
do me one more time here, please.
I'll renumber them for you. How's that? 5, 6, and 7.
There was potential options,
There you
other
go.
information.
Yeah. Options is number 5.
Right.
Additional information is 6, and factors is number 7. Those are the step numbers in the memo that I had last week. So, correct. So, the real question is, are these options, let me explain this. Like I said before, when we do birdies, I said when we met last time, a birdie team will say, Bank of America might be an option. This building might be an option. This location might be an option. This location might be an option. We don't evaluate all of the options on this list. This is just like the initial brainstorm. What are the initial options? And then you'll funnel it and filter it down to maybe 3, 4, 5 that you choose to evaluate. Does that make sense?
For example, we just added Bank of America building. And
Correct.
we added, what do we need to know about it?
Right,
Its availability.
right.
The answer to that question might rule this out as a real option.
It might take it
Right,
off
so,
the
yeah.
list immediately.
It will be an iterative process.
Correct.
Natalie, under number 6, you've got collaborate with other towns, need clarification, and that this is one thing I keep hammering on is if we sat down with our list, our wish list that came out of the survey, and sat down with Aberdeen and Southern Pines and said, okay, this is what our residents want. They go, well, this is, and see if we can find, just have the conversation, we can find a way that we can collaborate, that maybe I can provide services ABC and they can do D. Just start the discussion to see if there's any way that we can share the provision of certain services.
On select services.
On select, sir, and it may
Okay,
be,
that's what
for
I needed
example, just
clarification.
an example,
Okay.
copying and scanning and all that. Maybe it's something that Southern Pines says, oh yeah, they can use that service, boom, we check it. But have some sort of reciprocity or some cooperation where we provide certain things and they provide certain things, and that the whole community gets a greater array of services because they're being shared among the.
Does that go in on number 6 then?
That's what I did. I just changed it.
She had
I
need
collaborate with other towns on
Oh, I'm
select
sorry, no,
services.
tab 6. Step 6. Information we didn't need to know was what Southern Pines might, for example, be willing to collaborate on with their facilities and their services?
And, you know, I'm just making this up too. It may be that they're starting to see a greater need for a select service and they go, oh, wow, you guys could really help us out with that.
It could be, Southern Pines does, not that we wouldn't do any children's programs, but maybe they do children's and we do teens, or they do teens and we do children's, or,
I
you know.
think- Didn't we, I think we learned from the consultants that a library within a certain distance is an acceptable, I mean, you don't want to make somebody go 25 miles for a library, but if
As
it's.
a rule of thumb.
Yeah, there was some rule of thumb for that.
Wake County has a rule, or their practices within a 15-minute drive of your
That's
residence.
what I recall, yeah.
So does that make sense now?
I put rule of thumb for distance to closest library. That's something else we want to make sure we know. Okay.
What is on page 1 with all these tiers? Is this left
It's-
over from the consultant saying, this is how many square feet you have to have? Because,
No, it's not. It's revised. It's my estimate, based on my estimate in consultation with them.
well, I don't think we're ready for this.
You're not. I know. That's why I said I didn't want to talk about it tonight.
You know, yeah,
I just wanted to let you know there's a methodology for figuring out how much square footage
Might be-
based
might
on
be
the results of
required
the
or
ETC
desired.
survey.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also think may not be the best thing in the world to start naming private buildings that we don't own
already been done.
as possible ones that we want to.
Got us in trouble last time. Now we're doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, we wouldn't do that for other kinds of acquisitions. So I can't see making that kind of a list.
Okay.
All right, we know that there
The
are
only-
other facilities that we might want to investigate to see if they're available. For example, the B of A building, firehouse. Do you want to take it off the list?
Well, I think we might have something that says, look for other private property, but
Take it off.
But
the
I
li-
don't think we should be naming properties right now. I really don't. I think that's short-sighted.
Okay. Is that better, Jane, to just say other private property? Is that more appropriate?
But Natalie, you know what they are.
I cannot,
This is a
I
public meeting,
cannot
but-
read your minds.
Oh, no,
Let me
we
just-
know, we mentioned the old firehouse, we mentioned the old firehouse, we mentioned the B of A building. Who knows if there are others, but.
Well, the objective here, though, continues to be, this was put together by Natalie after a meeting a week ago, from input that pretty much everybody supplied. So what we're trying to do right now is to see is anything on this we want to
Right.
take off, or is anything we haven't added,
Correct.
and
So
do it
what I,
now. It's really just a
correct.
quick look over.
Go
We're
down the
not making
list.
any
Let's just
decisions.
go one
This is-
by one then.
Right, okay.
All right? So does council want to consider the option of renovating the existing building without expanding it?
Yes.
Yes.
There's 2 yeses. A no. 2 no's and a yes.
I'm yes.
Yes,
No,
3
I'm a yes.
yeses.
Yes or no? 3 yeses and a no.
Got 3 yeses and 1 no, so this one will stay. Option number 2, renovate and expand the existing building as needed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, I'm getting a few
Probably no.
yeses and some nos.
But go ahead, yeah.
Maybe I'll just do this. 3 yeses, we had
That's all right, just go ahead. It's a yes, go ahead.
co-locate near Cannon Park Community Center. So this is something that came up. It was an idea suggested by many residents as a potential. It would displace our parks and recreation facilities, but again, we're not evaluating it right now. We're just saying, is this an option that you want to consider?
No.
No. No.
Can I make it like a maybe? I consider,
Maybe's a yes.
yeah.
And maybe is yes, you want to consider it.
Yeah, there are no neutrals here.
I got
I
it.
don't think I would know.
Nope, so I got Kevin saying no.
Natalie,
Jane?
what if we say no now, but then some of the options, as we look at them, aren't viable, which would then
Could
make
go
that.
back to it.
Revisit the question.
You could
yeah.
go
Okay.
back to it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Honestly, I mean, what I would, you're going to want to get to a point to where you're not evaluating 8 different options. At some point, it's,
You want to narrow it down.
you got to narrow it
We're
down.
just
So
starting now,
we're
so-
just starting right now. So what did I hear?
No for
Either
I'll
three,
say it
it was either
again if
2,
you want.
3,
I heard
or
it.
1,
I heard a
4.
no and a no.
I think
And
Cannon
mine's if
Park is a no,
necessary.
isn't it? You're talking about item number 3.
Yep,
Cannon Park is a no
that's,
from the majority of people.
that's a no.
4 no's.
Unless absolutely necessary.
You like that one?
That's my favorite.
Okay.
No, is my favorite.
It's your favorite no?
That's your favorite answer?
All right, so I just heard we're going to take.
Sometimes
I just-
no is a slow yes,
Oh,
but not always. Count on it.
All right, so we're going to strike through this one. Cannon Park is kind of off the table, all right? What about co-locate somewhere around here near Village Hall? Stay on or off the list? Yes
I'm
or
a no.
no?
I'm a no.
Evan's a no.
I think yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I'll give
Not
you-
where I'd like it, but I think it has to be on the list.
What, Judy, you think it needs to be on
I
the
think it
list?
has to be on the list, but it
Yeah,
might
it
not
could
be
be
my
on the
favorite.
list.
Did you say yes on the list, Jane?
I did.
Okay, Lydia,
Yeah.
so this is yes, keep this one on the list for now, unless you change your mind later. The building we're not supposed to talk about.
So, except that
No.
Frank Mazer did have a conversation with Audrey and actually gave her a schematic of what when we were in the working group, that, you know, of converting that building to a library. So, I mean, yes, it's a private place, but talking about it.
Are you
Everybody-
talking about 4 or 5?
I'm talking about 5.
I wonder,
I'm a no.
I think Jane's point is well taken about, you know, tipping our hand,
Yeah, okay.
but really, I mean, the community, everybody knows we're talking about future library. If we approached the owners of any of these buildings in the future and asked about their availability, they're gonna know what it's about. I don't think we can keep this under our hat.
This one, the one we're not supposed to mention, that's already been on our website. It's
Exactly
been in
right.
conversations. It was in the preliminary
Oh, we're
report.
asking what we're for or against right now.
Well, I'm just, to the point of whether or not we're listing these things as options specifically.
We will have to evaluate specific sites. So.
We could have a general.
Other private property is, while it might be generic in terms of description, the level of detail or evaluation, not knowing where that might be impacted.
Where it is, what its size
Right.
is, what its
What
condition
it
is.
costs, what it might
Does
cost.
it have parking?
Does it have parking? We won't know the answer to those questions or be able to articulate them if it's general.
So you'll make it a general point, number 5? Nope?
I think what I heard you saying was this one's already been out there, so there's
It-
no
it
need in
is, but-
hiding it at this point.
But then we're adding the other one that we've just mentioned tonight because it's the same thing. Are they,
I think what I'm hearing you
situation.
say is you're open to considering other private property that may be appropriate.
yes.
Correct.
Yes,
So that is number 9.
buildings and raw land.
Yes, buildings
Good.
and raw land. So that will have to be narrowed down. So if you want Fred from Clearscapes to look for alternative sites.
Yeah, but we don't have to narrow it down tonight.
You don't,
No.
no, not
I
tonight.
don't. I said no.
And
I
you
don't.
said no. I think the majority of you said yes. Is that correct? Okay.
Natalie, what does he do when he looks for alternative sites? I didn't realize there were any, I mean, there were 2 mentioned in the preliminary study. We took one off the table, left one here. We've added another one. Are there other potential sites that we might want to consider?
That's what we're here for today.
Well, it just never, I mean, because only 2 were mentioned in the preliminary study, I was thinking those were the only 2.
he brought to you what he considered in his professional opinion, and based on what he heard from the public in February, what he thought the best sites were. Those were the ones that were listed in his report.
Is there anything to be gained by asking him if there are others?
I can ask.
Is that okay with everybody? To see if Fred thinks there are other possible, he mentioned two in the preliminary study. One, no way, the other one's still here.
Could be anything. I don't think we're trying to pin it down.
We're not
It's
trying to
not Fred's
solve it
opinion.
tonight.
But it's worth it to ask Fred if there are any other
Yes.
Will do,
possibilities.
will do. So let's just leave it other private property. You're open and considering other potential locations with the exception of Kevin.
Yeah, it's not Fred's decision to make.
Okay. So are we saying, yes, you're willing to consider the firehouse if you're willing to consider other private property? Am I interpreting that correctly? Okay. This was what my question was on in terms of collaborating with other towns and county on select services. The question was, is that in the place of
Yes.
Addition two.
or in addition to? So Jane says it's in the place of.
Now, I don't even think it fits on this list. I think this is just a blinding glimpse of the obvious.
I think we need to look into it. I think the consultant let us down. I think we have to look into it.
I think this comes up that Debbie didn't get a return phone call from Moore County. So I think that's just less to do about this conversation than about trying to do a good job.
I feel like this doesn't really fit here.
Well, I mean, if Jane's proposal is that we don't do anything about a
I understand.
library, and we only collaborate with other towns and counties and the SEC on selected services, my answer to that would be no. Hers can be yes.
Mine would be no, was on that. But I like the idea of collaboration,
I
so
think-
I just don't think it belongs on this
I
list.
think that comes naturally.
Yeah.
It has
Well,
to-
Well, that's the question. That's why you need to we need to clarify. Is this collaborate, I'm
Well,
sorry,
we
guys.
can't really
I could have made this a
collaborate.
lot bigger.
Excuse me,
Is
clarify.
that better?
There may be an opportunity to collaborate with one particular type of service. Who knows?
But you got to have the conversation with them. If Southern Pines
We
had said,
haven't.
Wait, guys, we have a librarian.
So I guess, exclusive or not,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it has to be exclusive. It might be exclusive, but it might not. It might be that, somebody's got a dandy computer system or
Sure.
something and.
Collaboration, good.
There we go.
Yeah,
But if that's what you mean, I don't think it belongs.
It
I mean,
doesn't
I think-
belong on this
yeah,
list.
It's not going to be the vehicle for being our library. Collaboration will come
It's
naturally.
a way to make any one of these options potentially more powerful.
That's right.
Right,
agree with
whi-
that.
which,
Right.
which
I
I
just
think.
think
will-
One
so-
that we might not be able
Belong on
to
this
so it
list.
doesn't
It
belong
looks
to
like-
do by itself,
That's on the
could
more
be
information needed. list.
bolstered, right.
How to collaborate.
okay, move it from here to more information needed. I'm fine, as long as we have that conversation.
And Natalie, I think 7 and 8 are the same thing, kind of. I really don't understand much difference, except one is, but I'm trying to understand the difference.
I was trying to
Seven.
be respectful of the comments that were made. So one of you said,
A.
wait 5 years to see.
Okay.
And then another said another option is do nothing. So I didn't know
I definitely.
how the rest of the council felt about that, so I put both of them on
think
the list.
we have to do something. And doing nothing is.
Who thinks do nothing
get
is an
All
option?
I think do nothing
nothing's
is
not an
is a
option.
contender.
In my book.
It's a possibility.
No, I'm
And
hearing
I
three
think it should
no's.
be on the list so that it's clear to everybody that we have the full range of options. We're not committing to anything. We could go one way, we could
Well,
go
that-
another way.
That-
And
that- I
putting
understand
that on for that reason is a reminder to everybody that we don't have to do anything.
Jane, I completely disagree with that point of view. And I think that absolutely doing nothing is an option once we get in and look and dive deeper on the information. But I don't think that needs to be needs to be any bit of the guidance with which we frame this work with. I think that's a terrible comment for our community.
But these are individual comments. I respect what you're saying. You don't agree, I don't agree with that. John hasn't said. and
I don't
Leah
agree with do nothing.
Agree with it. So it's kind of been outvoted, but I want to put capital towards this problem today, so I'm ready to deal with it. I've eliminated, you heard pretty loud no's on some options, but I want to deal with it, and I want to deal with it. I want to deal with it 2.5 years ago, but I want to fund this. I'm ready to put capital towards solving this problem. So to be consistent with that, do nothing, I cannot agree with.
Okay, I think I heard 3 who said, let's don't,
Eliminate that line.
yeah, we're gonna strike through that one. Okay, what about wait 5 years to see new trends?
It is the same.
It's the
do
same,
nothing.
you see that as the same as do nothing? And I'm seeing 3.
It's doing
head
nothing for a
nods no.
limited period of time.
Okay,
I don't understand what the precipitating urgency is, that we couldn't give this a little time and see what happens over the next couple of years before we plunge into something.
There's some validity in that change, like the size might not be perfect now. And maybe you're learning 5 years. So I see validity in what you're saying. It's just, everything's it's like that renovate and it's like to collaborate with other counties. It's just, this is something you're going to do no matter what. Evaluate post-COVID in whatever situation you're in. It's kind of like the collaborate, thing. That's why I'm having some conflict. But I see where you're coming from. But do nothing is it's strategically a possibility.
okay. So the way I'm seeing it is based on the consensus of the council, the options that at this point in time you want to consider, and again, other options may become available as we go through this process, is renovate the existing library, renovate and expand the existing library, consider co-locating near Village Hall, the firehouse, and maybe an other private property that might be suitable as well. Okay?
We are going to name private property.
We're going to have to know, I mean, we're going
I
to have to
really
get it
thought we
to a
should
parcel. Yeah.
Thought we were
We
gonna
can't
eliminate
evaluate it without,
Yeah, I can't
We're gonna
evaluate if I
eliminate
don't know where it
that
is.
specific property.
Yeah, and you'll see that as we kind of move forward
Not
to the
going to
next
eliminate
step.
that?
I'm gonna leave it there for right now with the note that we would need to better define later. Like, we would need to I should say
Could be deleted
specifically.
right now. Doesn't eliminate that option, just.
It doesn't. And again, I would like to go back to Fred, as Lydia suggested, to see were there other sites when he was here on his tour that he thought were suitable sites. And maybe that's different today than it was in February. So let's
Back-
ask the question.
The one we just named, that
Yeah.
Judy named, that
Right,
wasn't
let's-
there in February.
Right.
Something could have come up.
Correct. Okay?
There was people going in there.
Right. All right. Can we move on to the next tab?
What's next?
Additional information needed.
Okay.
Did you pull over the collaboration?
Thought I did, but maybe I didn't. I
Going
think
to
it might
talk
already
about
be
that.
here because it's showing up. Yes, it's on row 14. I did. Thank you. Okay,
Got a little bit larger.
sure. A little easier to see that? So obviously, as you're considering these alternative options, the ones that we just discussed, it'll be, I think, important for you, and this is the information that you've so far said that you would need, cost estimates for each alternative, potential funding sources for how the village could fund those estimated costs, what legal restrictions there may be on funding, what limitations there may be on the existing building. And this would be applicable to any building. So any existing building, whether it's the firehouse.
any option. At
Any-
the end of the day, any option
Any
is going to
option.
have,
A
depending on how big
limitation.
it is going to have limitations.
A size yeah, exactly.
So maybe, okay, so maybe a predecessor.
More of an evaluation criteria than a, you need information, I think.
This is number
Yeah,
4,
if-
right?
But if there are any limitations on a site, you would need to know. Like if there were environmental issues on a site or
Or any option.
any option.
Yeah.
That's why I changed it to building/site. If there were site limitations that you needed to be aware of.
Correct.
Right. Property owner willingness to sell if you're considering anything that's owned by someone other than the village. If there are any legal deed restrictions on any property that's owned by someone other than the village. This is something we talked about last time too. Knowing that one of the options, now that you're considering expanding or including, is the existing building, and therefore it would be appropriate for you to speak directly with the owners of that building, who have given an offer of their assets. So getting some clarification and some understanding around that is going to be obviously additional information that's going to be important for you. And then, of course, as we've discussed many times, the big question is what would happen potentially to the archives if the village does assume municipally operated library services, and that would be, again, another important thing for you to discuss. What are viable options for preserving history in the archives? The question, I guess, here is, should that maybe be in the village library? I don't know if this is the appropriate place for this to put it, but it was something that someone mentioned or brought up, so.
I think several of us mentioned that point. yeah.
Okay, okay. Clarifying information about what the library has offered to provide and support, making sure that we understand what all that means.
Is that not part of number 7?
It might be. So I think we probably can get rid of this one.
Want to combine them up?
Yeah, I'll just get rid of that. Then we've got the status of the library's application to join the North Carolina Library System, and I do believe that has been completed. Audrey, was that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the library is now part of the
Public libraries.
public, North Carolina Public Library System. Okay.
Later, okay.
Great, thank you, Audrey. So those of you who couldn't hear, Audrey kindly offered to explain what that means and how that benefits us to do that. So I'm going to cross this one out because we just answered that question. Is that okay?
Done.
Done. Impact of IT on libraries being redundant. This is a comment that one of you made. And I think where it was coming from, to clarify, who made this comment?
Which one are you talking about now? 10?
On number 10.
I think the suggestion was that we need to
Oh, you mean
better
11.
understand whether or not, for example, ebooks and all that stuff are making hard book library collection space unnecessary. I think we learned a lot about that in the working group.
Yeah.
That actually, national trends are working in the other direction right now.
Direction.
But it might be helpful to dust that information off.
Okay, so just look at, so I think maybe it's just some national library trend data. Is that a fair?
Yeah, in this case, it was relative to ebooks and digital learning.
Okay. All right, I just want to be clear, I understand what information I need to get. This is something that one of you brought up at the last council meeting. You did not include it in your email to me, but it was something you mentioned. I think it may have been you, Judy. There's a study or research out there that talks about the value or benefits of libraries in a community and how it contributes to community.
That was me.
Or maybe it was you,
And there were some
Lydia.
comments in the initial work that was done about the value that, how property values are increased with, if you have a library, just that general body of knowledge.
Right, so we'll pull that. Okay. And then the status of a building and the willingness and ability of others to collaborate on select library services. And I think you guys mentioned this rule of thumb.
And I would add sizing parameters for libraries. I mean, you sort of jumped to it with this first page.
Okay.
But what are the sizing parameters? You know, I mean, you've got.
What are the factors that went into that
Right.
calculation?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Mine went to 12.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. What'd you say, Kevin?
Mine went to 12.
Mine too, but I just added that now.
Added that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I added a few of them while y'all were talking. Just now. So these are all new. So size parameters for libraries.
Yeah, library services, I guess, is the right word.
And are you looking for this to come from,
Well, you
The
obviously,
architect?
you obviously got this from someplace. but,
yeah, like
I mean,
25 square foot per person?
right.
You want
So-
standards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Natalie, I don't know if it belongs on the additional information needed, but I've got staffing requirements, operating cost.
So that's on the next page, right? Factors
Actually
to
part of-
consider. Well, I guess you have to
On the
get it
next
here.
page.
Got to get it here.
Those will be included in the
Cost
operating
estimates.
costs, the cost estimates. Yeah, so think of these factors to consider. The factors to consider is something where you'll put each of the options at the top and then you'll weigh them against each other, right? So let's just say this is, for example, factors that you will weigh each of those different options against at some point in time. And again, these will change. And as I was saying, as I was doing this, every time I thought of a different option, it kind of brought to light a different factor. So this is really just to kind of get you thinking about the things that you may want to think about when you're choosing between alternatives. Okay, so obviously cost is important, right? So let's just say this one's really expensive.
Let's don't.
Yeah,
let's
no,
don't
we're not
get
going to
into
do
that.
it. We're not doing it now, but that would be an example of what you would do. You would come up with some rating system, right?
And I know you got ongoing operating
Mm-hmm.
costs on there, but I think Lydia's suggestion for staffing should be a separate line item. Because I think, we do care about personnel size of our village staff. And I think,
Be the lion's share of the
It
ongoing
will be the
operating
lion's-
costs.
Most important.
Be the overwhelming majority of it.
okay,
Right.
all right.
Staffing isn't ongoing, but we'll break it out. So when we bring you cost estimates, it'll have staffing, operating, capital, just like we do our normal 5-year capital plan or 5-year forecast.
So the number 4, site constraints, could also be site benefits. Because it might have good parking, it might be flat, it might be whatever.
Site considerations? And change the
Change it
constraint?
to considerations. That's a
No,
good.
well, I mean, you can just show the pluses and minuses. I mean, I'd say site benefits as well as site constraints. It's 2 different things to get a plus or minus.
Okay, we can figure out how to do that. Okay, site benefits. So some options, for example, would require higher infrastructure costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's not a road to it now, you might have to build a road, or you might have to build parking or whatever the case may be. So that kind of makes sense. Is it important for us to reuse existing buildings in our community as opposed to something new?
Good outcome.
Mm-hmm.
As a historic town, that would be good.
Right, right. I think this would be an important factor for you. Is it going to displace something else that's already there? So for example, if you had chosen Cannon Park, and it would mean we'd have to put athletic fields somewhere else. So that means you might displace something that's existing on the site or in the building.
Okay.
Either one. Centrally located in or around the village center. Some of you may think it's more important to be village center proper. Village Place might be okay to others, so on and so forth. ability to activate or stimulate other economic investment. These two are kind of related or interrelated. But this was a factor that Fred put in his initial cost kind of benefit analysis that he did in terms of Village Place as it relates to comprehensive plan. And obviously, we're doing some small area plans around it. That's really an opportunity to stimulate
So I think
additional
that is-
economic investment.
I think that is the
Kinda is the
intended
same
benefit
thing,
of,
yeah.
of being centrally located in and around the village center. And I wonder if, the counterbalance to that is what's accessible to the public? What site is most accessible?
Isn't that back up there with site constraints or benefits?
Could be-
Accessibility?
It could be, yeah, as long as we're thinking about it.
Accessibility.
Accessibility in there.
That's a good one. Okay, we'll add accessibility. Okay. Then maybe we can take one of these off.
I think that number 8 is more open-minded about the question
Right.
and gets to the heart of the matter too.
It's about economic, it's not, okay, so delete row 7? Or I should say row 12, number 7. I'll strike it
But
through.
location, I mean, as we're
It's
coming
all,
down to
it's
the
all
list,
centrally.
it's location, 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 right? As any real estate
Right.
agent would tell you, I think if we don't have a location on here, I think that seems very odd, and then-
Centrally located is,
And I think that certain things, I mean, if you placed it here in Village Hall, I'd say, I don't know that that's going to help stimulate any economic investment.
Right. That's my point, is that's the factor we're focused on, right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but I would have both location and this one on there, is all I'm
and
saying.
you're counting it twice.
I don't think so. I think they could be
because you're
different.
thinking location from a standpoint of accessibility, not just economic.
Right, and then that's another dynamic.
That goes back to now
Another
we
dimension.
put accessibility under site constraints and benefits.
I just think the end
I
location.
think we're being a little too precise here.
Yeah.
I think we need to move on.
Let's leave them on.
These
for
are all
now.
good points. I
Natalie,
think
can
things
we-
will evolve as we look at this list.
Can we add impact on
It
landmark?
is just a first cut.
Yeah.
Impact on landmark status? I mean, that would keep us from building a great big glassy, modern facility. Impact on landmark status.
Will a site choice impact landmark status or a building design impact landmark status?
Building design.
Anything that impacts,
Yeah. So I don't,
doesn't matter.
I mean, building design is a good one.
Yeah, potential impact on landmark I think you absolutely have to consider that.
okay,
It has to be
got
in
it.
there.
And then I think building design is a good one, too.
A lot more factors that can negatively impact historic.
Right. So what number are you on now, Natalie? You
I
just
am
added, so
jumping.
we're
Yep,
back to
I'm
7?
going back up here. I'm going back up here. Kevin asked for original intent of the Tufts Given family. We've got
Okay,
someone else asked for the timeline, including the phasing, such as a temporary move. So
That's 11.
timeline is a factor to consider, number 11 on here. Someone also mentioned where's the best strategic location for a library, i.e. something like,
So maybe we don't need
Well, doesn't that drop
12,
out now,
'cause we
given the
have
other?
7.
Yeah, we hit that with other
I'm
topics
sorry,
there.
I didn't
Yeah.
read down.
take this one off?
Yeah.
Is that what I just heard you say?
Comes out, we got it in
Okay.
other places.
That one's gone. Best use of existing building,
That's the reuse, adaptive reuse.
okay? Size of collection needed to meet resident needs. This is something that one of you suggested.
Is that more in the information needed by council?
I think it is. I don't think it
Size parameters in
goes
here.
here.
But maybe at the end, we ask what is the size of the collection that could be housed at that particular location?
Yeah.
That might be maximum collection, or I don't know. We'll think of a way to answer that. Ask it.
Okay,
And two questions. building design, we only know the building design of existing buildings. And we won't know the design of the other options until you design it.
Correct. Building design is something that's going to, I mean, it will cross all of these.
The form-based codes.
It'll take care of itself.
To me, building design should come off.
And then,
Because we're going to make sure it complies with our,
Correct.
That's true.
Got to comply with everything.
yeah. Okay, let's take that one out.
I'm a little bit confused by number 10, original intent of the Tufton Given family. Do we know what their intent was? And with relation to what?
What we're continuing to do.
Kevin's issue.
For example?
Have a library to serve the public.
So all of these options, except for do nothing off?
We took do nothing off.
Has a library.
I think it's pretty obvious, so I'm having a hard time figuring out how to explain it to you.
So leave it on.
We'll get into that.
I'm not
None of
committed
this is
Okay,
cast in concrete,
so-
right?
to doing a library at this point.
Is there anything else to take off or add on to this list? I think, I like it as it is. I'm done
Thank you.
with the list.
I think that's, especially given the late hour, the fact that we made a little bit of progress, that's very helpful. Obviously, there are some next steps and some conversations that need to be had, and we'll move forward with that as well. I would like to just take 1 second, if I can, throughout this entire process. I do really want to recognize Audrey and all of her support. I mean, and everything that she's done to answer my questions when I didn't know what the size of the library was, or I needed a floor plan, or I needed to know what was what, or Audrey's just been a really good resource. And I would encourage you, as you're going through this process, to know that, you know, she still is a very good resource and wealth of information that we have access to. So I just wanted to say thank you, Audrey. You're welcome.
Okay. I think we're going to move on. And we have a couple other things to discuss and then get to the closed session. Are there any other work session business items for tonight? Are there any future agenda topics you want to suggest? Sorry,
Yes.
Lydia, please.
I would like to see the tree work that Kevin Brewer did. We talked about it during the Village Chapel and taking trees down, but also one thing that the Park Service has criticized as far as trees on Village Green. So I'd really, and Kevin and I have talked about whatever work he's done. Can we just have Kevin come into a work session one time and
Talking
talk?
about Kevin Brewer.
Kevin Brewer.
Talking about the Village Green specifically
Well,
and the health of the trees.
well,
Yeah.
Two has talked about it.
I'm not sure, I just know Kevin has done a study, a survey of something of
Correct.
our trees and what, you know, what's going to need to be replaced when, and I don't think it's limited just to Village Green, is it? I don't know.
We've done a survey of, for example, it hasn't really, to my knowledge, it has not been focused on Village Green. They probably did go back and look at it based on conversations that took place a couple months ago, but initially, we were focusing on the rights of way downtown with our really old oak trees and magnolia trees, some of which just aren't very healthy anymore. And the idea was, if they're not healthy, let's take them down and replace them, so we start getting the process of regeneration going.
So that's my proposed topic.
Can I add one thing about that, about the trees? And
Yes,
the
ma'am.
thing that I have talked to the people who work on the green over and over, and we've also had an arborist come several years ago. Remember, he said that we should remove something like 300 trees or three, I can't remember, but there are no baby pine trees on the green. I've been there for almost 20 years, and I have not seen a baby tree growing. Why is that? And all of these, they're, you know, folks, they're all about the same age. All those trees out there.
We know that. Okay, look,
Okay, just saying.
take your point. Would you arrange, please, for Kevin to potentially attend the next,
That said yes.
the next work session? Because this has been an issue, it's been around for a while and affects a couple different things. So at a November work session, let's have him come and talk about this issue, okay? Because we've got other things to do here.
At one point, we're talking about trees on the PDO. Trees are important. I had an interesting conversation with my tree guy, Jeff Cutler, he's been trying to get all the towns to work together on a tree strategy.
Okay.
And he is really pragmatic. And I want to throw that name out there because I'd really like us to have a conversation with him because he cuts down, he has a tree business and he doesn't need to do that. He's in pretty good shape financially. He just loves trees. And his thing, his strategy seems like a strategy that is more acceptable to builders than, he seems more pragmatic, and I just wanted to, I think Kevin Brewer and him I'd like to see talk.
Well, let's open the discussion with Kevin specific to his knowledge and build this comment to Cutler in there. That's a good point to have that a broader
Because
point.
I want to encompass that
Okay.
bigger issue that we're trying to do in planning.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn the work session? And
I'd like to add another thing for other work session business. So last week, Jane was reporting that the Moore County commissioners, once a quarter, they bring PDO amendments to their meetings. I really loved that idea. And the thought of us looking, let's kick this around in the retreat. But I think that, we can nibble away at some of the text amendments that are needed in the PDO rather than waiting to eat the whole elephant.
And that was mentioned earlier, on Jane's point on wanting to do something immediately.
Yeah, well,
I
that's-
get
we're-
that, but I
Let's,
I mean, that's
let's get
consistent.
going. Let's
Ready
do
to-
it.
okay.
We can keep
I
chipping
just love
away
that
and chipping
cadence.
away
I
and
do
chipping away.
think that's a challenge with our existing planning and zoning department staffing. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, they're challenged, they're stressed, but sometimes in order to get things done when you're stressed, you have to have organization like that. You have to have a forcing function,
Okay,
so,
I just wanted to maybe when we bring on that new person, that's the perfect timing.
yeah.
I'm in.
but those are good points. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Kevin and Lydia, for raising those points. We'll add them on to next sessions. I think we're ready to move along now, Judy.
Want to move to a work session?
Yep,
I mean, end the
please.
work session?
Close
No,
the closed session.
I move to recess the work session and enter into a closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11, little a, in parens, 4 in parens, to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations pursuant to NCGS 143-318, little a in parens, 3 in parens, to consult with the village attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the village attorney and the village council, and pursuant to NCGS, paragraph 143-318.11, little a in parens, number 6 in parens, to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, and conditions of appointment of an individual public employee. Specifically, the council will discuss the village manager's performance review.
There's a motion by Judy Davis. Is there a second?
Second that.
Second by Kevin Drum. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move into a closed session. We've been